Hey, welcome to The Way of Valor. I am your host, Angie Taylor, and it's good to be with you guys today. Today, we're talking about a really critical skill for us ourselves as well as a parent, what we can do, and that is enlarging our kids' perspective. The reason this is important is it will help them navigate the world successfully. The truth is, I just got back from missions trips and I've spent the last few days in debriefs. Here at Valor, we send our kids literally all over the world during this time of year, every year in March. So we had kids in Kenya, we had kids in Philippines, we had kids in Guatemala, we had kids in New York City and multiple cities in the United States. And what I can tell you is this. When they come back with an enlarged perspective. And when we have an enlarged perspective, we are smarter and wiser human beings, and we navigate the world in a more successful way. I want to give you just a few really quick, easy examples of this because I think it helps explain why I feel so passionately about this, why I believe it is just essential for all of our families, for us as parents, as well as our students to adopt this mindset. And it's the mindset of being curious before critical. I'm curious before I'm critical. And I'm going to talk about why that is important because the reality is we live in a world where the enemy would love nothing more than to separate and divide us. In fact, you see that most evidently right now in the United States in our political climate. It is so hostile, but you also see it in the education climate with parents versus teachers. And I could go down the list of the ways that we see this. We see this in the culture wars. We see this across the board where it's a separated worldview. It's a separated mindset of we're choosing teams to be on. And my team is the right team. And the problem with this mentality is nobody's listening to one another, which means no one is growing, learning, and expanding how they are. I believe as Christ followers, we were created to be bridge builders. We were created to create paths for people, remove barriers for people to lean into the cross and to find Jesus. The problem with that is if we are choosing to be on a team with those people like us, those people that think like us, often we misunderstand God's love for the entire world, his reach to the entire world. Also in the idea of a kingdom mindset, a united mindset that he loves the whole world, it's a unifying mindset. It's a wise strategy just for general success in life. And so that's why I feel so passionate about this particular topic as a parent. So I'm going to just give you a few quick examples, simple examples from my mission trip that I was just on. We had made a plan, or so I thought, of we were going to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for our lunch. And when we go on these trips, we have the Korean students, we have the US students coming together. We make plans all day long. We're working with one another in the Philippines. So you're adding 3 cultures into the mix, which makes for a fantastic opportunity to be curious. We had made a plan to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and have those for lunch during the day. As I was traveling to our site location for the day to work, I was calling saying, hey, do I need to grab bread to make peanut butter and jelly? And I was talking to some members of the Korean team. They said, yes, grab the bread for the peanut butter and jelly. When I get to our site location, there are ladies that are frantically making lunch, that with peanut butter and jelly. And I was immediately frustrated going, why did you tell me to buy peanut butter? Why did you tell me to buy bread? I just bought all this bread for 70 students to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And so rather than just be irritated and think, gosh, you guys are dumb, I leaned into curious. Where am I missing? I was sure we had very clearly communicated. Here's what I discovered. When I leaned in and started asking questions about, I thought we were going to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch. You told me to buy bread. Their response was, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are not lunch. That's a snack for the afternoon. Do you guys eat that for lunch? And it came to full revelation to me that every time I talked about making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, they were in the mindset of, this would be a great snack for our kids in the afternoon. Yes, please buy it. I at no point was thinking snack. I was thinking lunch. And so in their minds, they still needed to make lunch for our people. Such a simple example of the million ways by which we think we've communicated clearly a point of view, but because the world lens, the worldview by which we're viewing the world through is different, we're coming to very different conclusions. And that can attempt to create a lot of strife. It can cause me to believe I'm arrogant. It can cause our children to believe that they know more than they know, or they're smarter than everyone else in the room. And rather than seeking to understand, rather than leaning in and saying, let me be curious about this situation. It's what I love about missions trips, because when you are living your day-to-day life, everything in your day-to-day life, we actually don't notice the massive amount of things that go on in our day-to-day life, because it's routine, it's ritual, it all makes sense in our brain and it all works in our brain. So we spend very little time thinking about it. In fact, 95% of our days are actually spent in automation mode of, I just go through the motions. This is what I do next. I do this without thinking about it, which is great because it's all about brain efficiency. That's what your brain is trying to do for efficiency. The problem with that is it also creates lazy thinkers and helps us just start assuming that our way is the best way, and there's no better way for this to be done. And it dims our critical thinking skills when we live in the sameness every single day. What I love about missions trips, among many, many reasons I love missions trips, this is simply one piece of that, is it enlarges our kids' perspective, because they are pushed into environments that are well outside of their comfort zones. They're often in Valor mission trips, we're bringing multiple cultures together. And you have to lean in. If you're going to get along on this trip at all, you have to lean in with curiosity and say, why do you do it that way? What is the thinking behind that versus well, that's dumb. You see that in our politics right now, so much of people talking about that's dumb. In fact, one of my staff members came back. We sent a group to New York City, and I had a staff member that went as the lead of that trip. And he explained to me, I went into that trip actually very afraid. I had watched the news. I had, was fearful of the immigration crisis, fearful of the lack of safety. I was suspect of the illegal immigrants that had come into our country. And I was expecting to see a bunch of bad guys. And what I discovered when I got there was, one, so many beautiful ministries on the ground working day after day after day to feed and serve families relentlessly, day after day. That was the first thing that he was impressed upon. Churches that were actually putting coolers in their sanctuary so they could host a food bank, when so many of our suburbia churches we want our churches to be pristine. We want them to be clean. So we won't even let a school be here, let alone a food bank with a bunch of homeless people. He was pushed well outside of his comfort zone. And what he recognized when he got there is, in the immigration crisis, there are a lot of families that came hoping for a new world and being thrust into the middle of a political war in the United States of America. And their family is also becoming a victim of that. And so there's just, and listen, this is not, don't get stuck on a commentary on the immigration crisis. There's so much to be said on that. That's a totally separate thing. The thing is his perspective from what he had heard and seen on the news was drastically shifted and challenged when he got on the ground and got firsthand experience and encountered it in a real world way. And that is so important for our kids. It is so important for us personally. It's so important for our kids. A few of the strategies that I've employed in my own life and that we've tried to coach into our kids is this. If you will start with the mindset of Jamie Winship talks about this. I've interviewed him on my podcast a few times, so you can go back and track down the Jamie Winship podcast, because he talks about worldviews. And there are really only two worldviews. There is basically the connected worldview, which is really a kingdom mindset. It's breathed by God. There's where wisdom and divine strategies are. There's where unity is. And then there's the separated mindset. We are separate. We choose our teams and we stay loyal to our teams at all cost. And the reality is the world longs to position us in that framework of that kingdom mindset versus separated mindset. The way to operate and function, to teach your kids how to operate and function as well as you yourself, is to start with a core belief, a fundamental core value deep within you that says all people are created by God. Whether they agree with me politically, whether they are in my culture, whether they look like me, they were created in the image of God for plan and purpose. They may not currently be living out that, but I can promise you this: God loves them. God wants them to be in relationship to him, the same way he wants you and I to be in relationship. And when you start with that core fundamental belief, it shifts the way you function and operate with that person. The next thing is you all of the sudden start leaning in, saying, okay, I had a situation when I was in the Philippines where I was dealing with someone from another culture. And again, what was being presented to me presented very much as a disrespect to me personally. Felt very dishonoring. And I really wanted to react to what I felt was dishonoring. Instead, I pulled back because I was sensitive to my own sense of, man, I'm feeling really emotional about this. But I leaned in and asked God, what do you want me to know about this? What do you want me to understand about this situation? And I just gently heard God say, I want to reach the heart of this person. I want this person to be transformed, and how you, a follower of me, handles and deals with this person will make a difference in whether or not their heart is hardened towards the things of God or they are drawn near to the things of God. And so rather than deal with him out of my emotion, my offense, I leaned in and said, ooh, let me address this differently, because you're someone created by God who he wants to transform. You're someone who he's got a good plan and purpose for. So let me first seek with trying to understand, man, why do you do it that way? Why did you make that decision? Do you know when you hear people's stories and you start hearing them unpack how they came to the conclusions they have, how they behave the way they behave, it removes a lot of your sense of arrogance over you know best, because you start hearing their story and you start recognizing, man, if I were in that same situation, I don't know that I would be responding differently. Thank you for sharing that with me, and it opens this beautiful door, because when people are seen and heard, they feel cared about. And when they feel cared about, they're leaning in to listen. And I am telling you, as believers in Jesus Christ, that is what God has called us to, is that leaning in with a heart that says, help me understand where you are so I can hopefully introduce you to a loving Savior that transforms you. I'm not the one that's going to transform you. I'm not going to clean you up. In fact, what I've discovered more often than not, when I lean in with curiosity, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm seeing the thing that I thought was the right way, the best way, is actually not. There's a better, more gentle, kinder way. It's just, even when you get the cultures together, what you see in American culture, and man, I am born and raised Midwest girl. and just my personality lends really well to the American culture. I'm very strong. I'm very independent. I'm very outspoken, all the things. So I lend myself really well to be an American female. But when I watch, her name is Missionary Lee in the Philippines, and she has learned to honor God and serve in a community that is more of a male dominated community, meaning the women aren't preaching in churches. The women aren't necessarily the leaders out front. But what I've observed of her is this beautiful, quiet strength to lead a ministry over 24 years. But what she's done is she's raised up an entire generation of young leaders and males that are taking their place in Jesus loving ways that are shifting culture and shifting the way they honor one another and shifting. And she did it so beautifully. She didn't do it by claiming her rights as a female, by claiming her rights as a leader. She did it in the most humble and gracious way. And the reason for that was because it wasn't ever about her. It was about her Savior, and it was about fulfilling the call of God on her life to love and reach people that needed to know Jesus. And what I've discovered is when we get our core values really well lined up, right? It's about His glory, not my glory. It's about what He's, the wisdom from on high, not me being right. Often God's wisdom, not often, always, God's wisdom is higher than my thoughts, greater than my ways. It's usually, in my world, it's usually gentler than the way I would approach things. And so what I can tell you is when we do that, when we lean in with this curious mind, have helped me understand why you make the decisions the way you make them. We grow, we learn, we become wiser. But we also gain room then to speak words of truth from the throne room of God because we've demonstrated our care and concern. I think too often one of the number one mistakes I see it often from parents that parents are making is we are protecting our kids from hard things. If our kids say they're feeling anxious about a situation, we're like, oh, then you don't have to do it. If our kids don't want to do a situation, then we're like, you don't have to do it. And it is such a massive disservice if your kids are living in their comfort zone. They will never reach divine destiny. And I'm going to tell you this, your kids are always going to cling to the thing they know. It is human nature. Every time we plan a trip or we plan at Valor, we have retreats multiple times a year. And anytime we talk about, hey, we're going to change location, I get pushback on the change of location. We like this location, and here's what I've discovered. What we like is familiarity. What we like, and while that's not bad, the reality is we don't know what is out there. We don't know what the next opportunity is. And so because it's unknown to us, it's mysterious to us, we cling to what we know. Unfortunately, when we cling to what we know, that keeps us in a stuck place. We cannot grow, and our kids can't discover the powerful, awesome encounter you can have with God when you step into the unknown, into the uncomfortable places. I've had this time and time again on missions trips where kids with high levels of anxiety go on trips with me. And right before the trip, they always want to pull out. Their parents are like, oh, I'm really nervous. I don't think they should do this trip. And I'm always like, let's do it. Tell them they're going to be fine. Tell them if we need to make a call with the parents, they can make a call with the parents. Without fail, I have never had a kid go on one of these missions trips where they get involved in serving others. So they're no longer just thinking about themselves, but now they're thinking about how am I adding value to this community? They are doing things that are actually matter, that are important. It's one of the ways of Valor is your education has to matter. When we hand things kids homework that in the grand scheme of things that don't matter, they know it. They know it. When we hand kids homework that they can Google in 5 seconds or less and they don't understand why they need to know it, of course it creates a massive amount of irritation, frustration, as well as a sense of apathy in them because their life doesn't matter. Every one of us at the root and core of our life need to show up every day knowing what I do matters in the grand scheme of things. It matters. It matters if you're going to a job that maybe you don't particularly like your job, but you know, I go to this job every day and do it well because I provide for my family that way. That matters. And it's important. It's every bit as important for our kids to have that thing that matters, to have that thing that is significant to them, not because it's fun, not because it's pleasurable, not because but because your life has worth and value, and you showing up to add your value matters. And that is so important in the life of our kids. But I'm telling you, that often is found outside of their comfort zone. They often are going to fight you on doing the things that land outside of on going on the mission trip or going to serve in your community or going to a new friend group. Your kids are 9 out of 10 kids are going to say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to stay home. That's awkward. That's weird. And I am encouraging you as parents to do it anyway. You know, looking at your kids going, hey, we do hard things and we're going to go do this anyway. You try it once. If we go and you're thinking, gosh, this isn't the right fit, great. You tried it. Good for you. What you don't want is your kids to feel a sense of rightness. And I said, I'm scared to go there. I said, I'm full of anxiety, so I won't do it. And we say, oh, okay, my kid's not going to do that. They're afraid. They don't want to do it. And I've seen this time and time again of parents pulling out and letting their kids do the comfortable thing. The problem is you affirm to your kid, yes, we too believe it's scary and we don't think you're capable of doing that either. So we think you better stay home. You are setting up and establishing a pattern for your kid's life when you do that. However, when your kid, it's normal for us, it's normal for all of us to go, this is really scary. This is really scary. That new thing, that uncomfortable situation, that's normal for all of us. It's our job. Hear me, parents. It is your job as parents to take your kid's hand in the moment of a scary situation to say, it's scary, but we're going to be okay. We do hard things. We're going to be okay. We do hard things, because when your child does that, that sets them up for life. When you want to apply for a job that you might be rejected from, when you might want to make a move that is going to be a powerful move for their family, being able to provide for their family, all of those things become second nature to them when they've learned we do hard things. When they've learned a sense of resourcefulness of, yeah, I was scared to do it, but I didn't not do it because I was scared. I did it anyway. Probably one of the greatest values in the Taylor family is that idea of adventure. We step into the unknown. We did it with our kids through a myriad of circumstances. My favorite is missions trips. My kids have been on missions trips from the time they were little, because I always wanted them to understand you are so capable of showing up in a beautiful way in the world. And when you do it, one, God is honored in who you are, but two, your perspective is enlarged. You learn to think well about the world. You don't simply take what's being fed to you on social media, because honestly, what gets fed to you on social media often is all about your insecurities, because it's programmed to keep feeding you this stuff that you're comparing yourself to. And the worst thing we can do is let kids compare, and then I'm not going to show up for myself. Like, that is why we have the level of anxiety that we have. In fact, the last thing I'll say on mission trips is one of the things we do. It's one of my very favorite things we do on a mission trip is we actually take all of our kids' phones away from them. And they willingly, by the way, hand up over their phone. They know before the trip that, hey, You're not going to have your phone. We'll let you take it until we land. You can check in with your parents, let them know you're safe and sound, but then we're locking all phones up. The report by the end of the week, not one kid grumbles about it because it's a preset expectation, but the report by the end of the week from the kids, in fact, I'll do an interview here in the next week or so. The report from our kids is, I felt less worried. The very specific statements, I asked my kids at the end of the week, tell me how you felt without your phone this week. One response was, I didn't have any worries this week, or I didn't feel any pressure this week. I just got to be in the moment. Another student said, I felt like I got to be a child again. I felt like I just got to be present and be a child again and didn't have to think about any of the pressures. I was really surprised by the kids' reports on, I didn't have anxiety of this week, which we had them outside of their comfort zone. We had them ask them to do things that, talk to this Korean and Filipino kid, none of y'all speak the same language. Go. We were asking them to do things that would make most people just drastically insecure. And our kids' report at the end of the week was, I didn't have anxiety and I didn't have worry. Because see, when scrolling cell phones is a passive movement for our kids, but when we enlarge their perspective and put them in hard situations, they're actually proving time and time again they can do it. It's powerlessness that causes us anxiety. It is when we're pushing in and we're fully present in a moment, that actually removes anxiety. And so, the last comment that I would say about it was just, the kids were actually very excited that they didn't have their phone. They thanked me for taking their phones away. They said that it felt like such a good detox, such a good week to be free from all of the pressures that came from owning a cell phone, because they felt the pressure of school, and now I can log in here and I can log in there. So I think it's really important for our kids that you consistently push them outside. Listen, take their cell phones away, have detox breaks with your family. One of the kids actually said, I realized I use my cell phone as a shield from relationships. When I don't know what to say or do, I just pull up my cell phone so I don't have to talk to my parents. The reality is if you as a family will choose to enlarge your capacity by doing things like, we're going to serve at a food bank, or doing things like, hey, we're going to detox our cell phones on this vacation, or consistently saying, we're going to seek to be curious about the world around us, enlarge your perspective. We're very intentionally enlarging your perspective. What you'll come away with is kids that think well and critically about their world, kids that aren't just victims to what is being fed to them on social media. And we all become victims, myself included, to getting into party lines. We did, like, the news only reports the catastrophes. And so, of course, that's what we believe about what's going on in the world. And so I just want to encourage you and ask you this question as I close up. What are you doing to enlarge your kids' perspective? What are you doing to enlarge your own perspective of the world? Where are you uncomfortable? And where are you leading in the discomfort? Because that is the place of growth. That is the place of realizing your divine destiny. That's the place you find God shows up beautifully, because all of a sudden you're not in autopilot mode. You are leaning in, saying, God, what do you want me to know? How do you want me to see this person? How do you want me to reach this person? All right, guys, that's all the time I have today. I hope this blessed you. I hope you have a great day. If you liked this podcast, if it was helpful to you, give it a 5-star review. Share it out with your friends. If you have friends that maybe are interested in the Valor way of education, we do it differently. And guys, I came back from this trip so pleased because the profound transformation we saw in the lives of our kids, as well as the kids we were serving, was so exciting to me that I can tell you it works. The way we're modeling education, the way we're doing it is so effective and profound. And we are raising, truly, I know it's cliche, we are raising world changers. Have a blessed day. Thanks for listening.